Thank you. We'll call to order the regular Board of Supervisors meeting for October 2nd, 2012. We will start with the invocation by Pastor Heather Hennessy from First Christian Church, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Supervisor Baugh. Pastor?
As you all stand, I'd actually like to ask your permission to tell a very brief story that just occurred. As many of you have the experience, I often am asked on the streets for money. Well, this morning I had to ask for money. I arrived and I realized I didn't have a single cent in my wallet. And I had to walk up to a perfect stranger and say, "Forgive me, but would you have a dime?" And she gave me a quarter so that I will not get a parking ticket. And I just have to smile and think, isn't God wonderful, and isn't the grace and the humor of life amazing? So to the kind woman in this room who gave me a quarter, thank you so much. And now let's pray. Holy One, it is a brand new day. Each of us brings the memories of yesterday and certainly some of the pain that may follow. Each of us has some fear about tomorrow. May we set the pain aside and the fear aside and celebrate the gift of possibility in this day. Thank you for your love and grace which support us. May we be open to that still small voice of wisdom that you offer us. We ask your special blessing upon our leaders for their wisdom, their patience, their appreciation of the small, trusting gifts in life, that they may truly take us down the right road this day and in all the days to come. Be with us in our celebrations, in our hopefulness, in our acceptance of what must be. Hear our praise and our thanks for the gift of this day. Amen. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, on this great and glorious day in Shasta County, would you join with me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, Supervisor Baugh. I think it was nice to hear we still have great people here in Shasta County who really help each other out. The next item is a public comment period. Persons wishing to speak, we ask them to come forward and please give their name. Each speaker is allocated 3 minutes to speak. Comments should be limited to matters within the jurisdiction of the board. Pursuant to the Brown Act, action or board discussion cannot be taken on open time matters other than to receive comments, and if deemed necessary, refer them for appropriate follow-up. I have 2 requests so far. The first is Kathy Grindstaff, followed by Dolores Lucero.
Good morning, supervisors, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kathy Grindstaff. I am the project director for Sobering Choice Coalition, and I'm here representing our coalition and members of the community. As I have stated at previous meetings, we all need to start now to work towards a common goal of limiting cultivation of marijuana in Shasta County. We are now seeing another grow season come and go, and no real significant change in upholding the ordinance. I realize the ordinance was adopted and put into effect January 1st, 2012. Thank you. But we have not been able to deal with the numerous calls and complaints. Shasta County has worked hard to design and put into place ordinances that address issues from both sides. We failed to consider the additional staff needed to encourage growers to comply with the ordinances. We need additional compliance officers and sheriff personnel dealing with the calls and complaints. We know that this is a big job, and we are here to help find a solution. We need to address this issue now. We do not need to wait till another grow season is here and have no plan in place to deal with the calls and complaints. all around Shasta County, cities, towns, and counties are dealing with the marijuana grows. It scares me to think that all around us, communities such as Dunsmuir are considering relaxing their cultivation rules. Oregon is going for a full-on legalization, to name a few. If marijuana was truly meant to be a medicine, why would we consider legalization for recreational use? We are not looking at the big picture. We are raising a generation of youth who are destroying brain cells, who are putting their full potential to become contributing adults at risk. We all need to look at the big picture and become the community that chooses to make a difference for our youth and our community's well-being. The sooner we work together to deal with this situation, the sooner we can come up with a solution that works for all of us. We are here to help now. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Do we have this scheduled for some kind of review coming up here anyway?
We do the meeting to review the ordinance, and any creating the upgrades will be November 6th.
Great, thank you. Dolores Lucero.
Good morning. My name is Dolores Lucero. I have a couple concerns, and I'm going to give you an idea where I come from. I grew up in Los Angeles. My uncles and cousins were, and they were all in law enforcement. I looked up to an uncle who actually was a police officer, who actually was ambushed. 6 months later, my mom passed away. And that uncle actually was my role model. And I believed on the law to basically to follow the law, to enforce the law. Unfortunately, I grew up in Los Angeles where it was the worst neighborhoods you can imagine. I grew up where there was a lot of gangs, the Hells Angels, the Mongols, the Mexican mafias. I managed my entire 50 years to keep my background clean. I managed to survive until I moved here in Shasta County. Shasta County is probably the worst place I ever lived in, but because now I'm facing criminal charges, and it was because of Tom Paseco, who actually is our sheriff, who's using his authority, who's using his to manipulate people, and he intimidate people. And I think it's wrong for law enforcement to use his authority. And I think it's time for a new sheriff, because we need someone who we can trust and rely on. Not someone we're going to have to worry about, is he telling the truth? Is it the citizen lying? I've been saying the truth. I will fight with the truth, because I grew up with uncles who believed in the law and to enforce the law. Unfortunately, I believe there's a lot of corruption in this county. And I feel sad for the people who feel that they can't stand up to speak what they want to say. And that's what I'm paying. I'm paying the price for that, for speaking up and standing up for people. But I will not back down to the people. I will fight all the way to the end. Whatever it takes, I will not back down, because you cannot use your authority to overpower the people. And I am going to still fight. And I want to say it's also your responsibility to oversee the people, to make sure you protect the citizen. And so far, I like you, Ms. Linda Hartman, I like a lot of you, but I have to draw the line when it comes to enforcing the law. That's the difference between me and other people. I might like you, have coffee with you, but I draw the line when you do wrong. I will stand up and betray you, because if you're breaking the law, I will make sure I enforce it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lucero. I'll just say that after a 31-year law enforcement career and 6 years as a police chief, I had the chance to work side by side with Tom Paseco and have nothing but the utmost respect for him and his high ethical standards, and consider him doing a great job. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Moving to the regular calendar. Consider adopting a proclamation which designates October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Supervisor Kehoe.
Thank you, Chairman Modi. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. During the course of the year, we present 100 or so proclamations. And the proclamation that we're about to approve this morning is very, very important to us individually and to us as a community. And that proclamation reads as follows. Shasta County Board of Supervisors Proclamation, Domestic Violence Awareness Month, October 2012. Whereas the crime of domestic violence violates an individual privacy and dignity, security, and humanity due to systematic use of physical, emotional, sexual, psychological, and economic control and/or abuse, including abuse to children and elderly. And whereas the impact of domestic violence is wide-ranging, directly affecting individuals and society as a whole throughout the United States and the world, cutting across all economic, racial, societal barriers, and whereas the citizens of Shasta County have consistently identified domestic violence as a major community health problem. Whereas many individuals and organizations in Shasta County have come together to provide hope and assistance for all members of families torn by domestic violence, as well as providing prevention, education activities for everyone in our community, specifically serving over 500 people each month at the Shasta Family Justice Center, which is a collaborative one-stop center for victims of family violence. Now therefore be it resolved that the Shasta County Board of Supervisors hereby proclaims the month of October 2012 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Shasta County, in recognition of the important work done by domestic violence programs, and encourages all citizens to actively participate in the scheduled activities and programs sponsored by the Shasta County Domestic Violence Coordinating Council, the Shasta Women's Refuge, the Shasta Family Justice Center, and the Shasta County District Attorney's Office to work towards the prevention and ultimately the elimination of domestic violence. And on behalf of the Board of Supervisors, this document is signed by Supervisor Leonard Modi, our chairman, signed October 2nd, 2012. I move approval of this proclamation.
Second.
Thank you, Supervisor Keel. Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Lowry.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman and members and Supervisor Kehoe, thank you very much for that this morning. And by the way, I'm Josh Lowry, Chief Deputy District Attorney, Shasta County. And by the way, this morning I have some different members of the community that have joined together and work to fight domestic violence. And some of the staff is in the audience as well. What I'd like to do is have each person identify the members of the staff in the audience, introduce them, and then after that's done, I'd like to have Jean King, the Executive Director of the Shasta Women's Refuge, come up, receive the proclamation, and talk a little bit about some of the stats and things going on in the community regarding domestic violence. So first, why don't I have Angela McClure, who is the Program Manager for the District Attorney's Crime Victims Assistance Center, come up and introduce her staff that's present in the audience today. Thank you.
Good morning. Everybody rise who works with us. The audience is full. Everyone's saying voices, Shasta Women's Refuge. I'm not going to get everyone's name. I'm going to have you introduce yourself and what you do. Go ahead. Everyone.
Yeah, you guys too.
All of it.
I'm Michael Heide. I'm with the California Victims Government Compensation Board.
Debbie Allison, Crime Victim Assistance. Karen McLeod, Claims Supervisor, Shasta County Crime Victims Assistance Center in the DA's office.
Crystal Dennis, Victim Assistance. Desiree Bordon, I am
Fowler, I'm executive assistant. Martin McKenzie, Shasta Women's Refuge board member.
Thank you, everybody.
And next, I'd like to have Michael Burt come up. He's the director of the Shasta Family Justice Center, which has now been brought in under the umbrella of the Shasta Women's Refuge, which is becoming a model for not just the state of California, but nationally. And I'd like Mike to come up and introduce anybody else in the audience that he feels is appropriate. And then I'd like to have him talk a little bit about the stats real quickly, number of visits, high visit month, and things along that line. Thank you. Come on up, Mike.
Hi, I'm Michael Burke, the director of the Shasta Family Justice Center. Thank you all. It's been about 2 years since I addressed you, and in that time we've had over 7,000 visits for service at the Shasta Family Justice Center. Since merging with the Women's Refuge on January 1st, 2012, our numbers have increased over 200 per month. So we are stronger together, and we're going forward as stronger as one. There's a couple of people in the audience. Laurel Park, who's filming this for us, is our volunteer coordinator and has trained over 200 volunteers in the center. Last month alone, we had 344 volunteer hours logged at the center. And then Dana Anderson has traveled the nation speaking on our Voices Committee, which is an advocacy group of survivors speaking out against domestic violence, sexual assault, child abuse, and elder abuse. Jean King will run through more numbers, but thank you all. 2 years ago, I told you the quote from Margaret Mead that never underestimate that a small group of people can make a difference, because in fact it's the only thing that can. And you can see in this room, this small group of people is making a huge difference in our community. Thank you.
And now I'd like to introduce Jean King. She is the executive director of the Shasta Women's Refuge. She's really a visionary. It was under her leadership that the Justice Center was brought under the Women's Refuge, which again is becoming a model, a national model, with the National Family Justice Center Alliance out of San Diego. This information has already been received by the Justice Department in Washington. So it really is a model for the nation, and she deserves a lot of credit for that, and I'd like to have her come up and speak now. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Josh is also, as many of you know, one of our board members, so we're very fortunate.
Ms. King, if I could just have you move over just to the other area.
Over here?
Perfect, yep.
Up. Move that to there. Okay. Thank you so much for having us here today and having our wonderful staff here. We are quite fortunate to work with wonderful people and with a wonderful board of supervisors. We thank you so much for all that you do, and we thank you for this proclamation. We want to thank the staff of the Shasta Women's Refuge and Family Justice Center who are in the audience today. We already did that. Those of us who are administrators realize that it's the staff members that really do the work. They work the 24 hours a day with the clients. It's not us, it's them, and it's what they do and our volunteers, and we couldn't do it without them. They do a tremendous job. Our greatest achievement this year was merging with the Family Justice Center, and Mike really went through the important numbers. It's made a huge difference in how many people we're seeing, how many people we're seeing together. So what we know is that we're serving Shasta County better every day. We are proud that Shasta Family Justice Center was selected by the Chamber of Commerce as the nonprofit of the year, and that the Shasta Women's Refuge was voted as the best of the North State nonprofits by readers of the Record Searchlight. As much as these awards honor us, it is only with the cooperation of our partners that we are able to provide services. We have over 40 partners who make it possible to provide these services to families. We have a full calendar of events this month to acknowledge Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Began yesterday with downtownreading.com organizing a food drive for our shelter and for the Justice Center. 32 businesses in downtown will have a Fill the Bag in front of the store for a month. And we have on October 19th a drive-through at Out West Furniture for the community to be able to drop off food. So we're very proud that we are so closely connected with the community. We are also speaking at Simpson University. We're speaking at Shasta College. We have a candlelight vigil in Shingletown. We have an event called Vanity Fair, hats, handbags, and heels that will be at Riverview Country Club, and that is money to support the shelter. We have Melissa Hunt, who will be on the roof at the outlets in Anderson to raise $10,000. She's not going to come down until that happens. So we're just pleased how the community works with us in this to acknowledge this month. Today, we join Americans across the country to support victims of domestic violence and let batterers know that there is no excuse for abuse. Domestic violence is a problem of epidemic proportions in our country. The violence knows no boundaries. It exists in all neighborhoods and all cities. It has no racial barriers, no economic barriers, and no social barriers. Only if men and women come together and send the message that family violence is unacceptable can we finally put a stop to the violence that is causing so much heartache in our community. Public proclamations such as this raise public awareness about family violence and let our community know that it is unacceptable. Thank you again for all your support.
Well, let me say something. Ladies and gentlemen, Chairman Modi has graciously invited me to make this presentation, but this is so important to all of us that I'm going to ask him to come down right now and present this to you. Mr. Modi, as chairman, represents all of us in Shasta County, and this is truly a community accomplishment and a community initiative. Chairman Modi, thank you.
Thank you, David. You know, as I sat there and watched the presentations, it just reminded me of how crucial it is to have people involved in our community, and certainly your staffs are what makes this happen. And it helps such a necessary group that needs assistance on occasions to move forward with their lives. And I certainly saw that a number of times in my life as a police officer, more than even as a police chief, as a police officer, being out there on the streets and going to some of these calls and seeing some of the situations that are occurring. And it always sort of tore my heart. And I'm just so pleased that we have groups like Women's Refuge and the Justice Center and always the support of the DA's office to help these victims to move forward with their lives and put their lives back together. So it's a great honor for me on behalf of all my colleagues to recognize you and to present you this proclamation for this recognition of being Violence Awareness Month to really help our community, as you stated, be aware of the situation, to not just sit back and not say things, but to step forward and be part of the solution to help this be a better community. So thank you all for the work that you do. We'll now move on to our item R2, which is consider a proclamation for Lights On for After School, and I've asked Supervisor Haas to present this proclamation.
Thank you. Shasta County Board of Supervisors proclamation, Lights On After School Day, October 18, 2012. Whereas the citizens of Shasta County stand firmly committed to quality after-school programs and opportunities because they, 1, provide safe, challenging, engaging, and fun learning experience to help children and youth develop their social, emotional, physical, cultural, and academic skills. 2, support working families by ensuring their children are safe and productive after the regular school day ends. 3, build stronger communities by involving our students, parents, business leaders, and adult volunteers in the lives of our young people, thereby promoting positive relationships among children, youth, families, and adults. And 4, engage families, schools, and diverse community partners in advancing the welfare of our children. And whereas Project SHARE has provided significant leadership in the area of community involvement in the education and well-being of our youth, grounded in the principle that quality after-school programs are key to helping our children become successful adults. And Lights On After School Day, a national celebration of after-school programs on October 18th, 2012, promotes the critical importance of quality after-school programs in the lives of children, their families, and their communities. And more than 28 million children in the U.S. have parents who work outside the home, and 15.1 million children have no place to go after school. And many after-school programs across the country are facing funding shortfalls so severe that they are being forced to close their doors and turn off their lights. Now therefore be it resolved that the Shasta County Board of Supervisors hereby proclaims October 18th, 2012 as Lights On After School Day in Shasta County. And this is signed by Chair Leonard Modi. I'll move approval.
I'll second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, board members. Thank you for standing behind Project Share and our other after-school programs in Shasta County. This year, Jessica Copes, thank you very much. I am the Family Outreach Coordinator with Project Share. And this year, our Lights On Day is October 18th, and we are marching at Reading City Hall as well as Anderson Teen Center. We have 4 after-school programs in Shasta County: Project Share, YMCA, ACE, and SAIL. And all of these 4 programs will have children marching wearing our yellow shirts in support of what we do after school. Here in Shasta County, we have approximately, well, within Project Share, we have 1,500 students that we serve at 24 of our sites. And those students don't have anywhere to go between the hours of 3 and 6 is what we have found. And they want to stay at school. They want to be there to have homework help, have people that care about them. We provide them a nutritious snack, different engagements, community outreach projects. And this is our way of letting the community know what we do. And we thank you very much for standing with us. And we invite you to come out if you're doing nothing on Thursday the 18th between 3:30 and 5 p.m. And we brought a flyer for you guys to show proudly. Thank you very much for signing our proclamation and for standing with us. We also brought a few of our Project Share members, our director, Jody Van Ornum, one of our other project coordinators, Austin Preller, and our project technician, Amy Morales.
Great, thank you.
Awesome. I think that's very important. You know, that's a long time for kids to be alone. A lot of things can happen, so we're proud of you for taking care of them. They need the supervision. Thank you. And, well, it's true. They do. Some do. Not all of them have nice grandmothers that go pick them up, you know, and bring them home and take care of them. So it's very, very important. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming in today. The next item is R3, presentation from the Assessor Recorder Leslie Morgan on her annual report. Ms.
Good
Morgan.
morning. And before Project Share leaves, I'd like to just add the aspect that my children also have benefited from their program, and it's so nice to know that they have someplace safe to go while you're still at work doing all of our items throughout the day. Chairman Modi, members of the board, Leslie Morgan, Assessor Recorder, and I'm here today. I come each year before you to share with you an annual report that I put together for the benefit of just providing statistics analysis of the information that our office puts together when we close our assessment roll. One of the things I want to point out is it's not that I want to spend a lot of time on the numbers. I just mostly like to make you guys aware and the citizens aware that this information is out there. If there are specific questions about any of the charts or formats available, by all means, they can contact my office. So today's quick run-through will give everybody just the information that is available to them in a PDF format on the website, and or you can contact the office. I can skip through the table of contents. It just briefly puts together the information that you can find in the office. Oh, sorry. Essentially, I begin the report with just a message page to kind of in summary view put together the numbers. Essentially, what happened with us here in Shasta County this year is our assessment roll closed 1.36% less than the assessed values were last year's close of roll. From the perspective of the assessor's office, one of the things to always bear in mind is our assessment rolls are compiled of base year valuations that have either been adjusted by the Consumer Price Index, California Consumer Price Index, and/or have been reviewed for reductions in value based on the analysis that if your market value of your home is less than its base year adjusted value. So with that, we have quite a third of our properties essentially that are in the state of having a reduction for the adjustment to current market value, as opposed to the base of we do have a lot of, I guess, stable base in our county, because we have a lot of people who, like myself, might have been born and raised here and have a lot of family who've had properties for quite some time. And those properties still do receive the adjustment each year for the California Consumer Price Index, that resulting in the 1.36 decline from last year's assessed value. As you can see, if you just take the base of 1% and apply it to the total close of the roll, that's still $146 million in revenue at a state level in terms of what property taxes are to the state and to the county. We do have the responsibility of also providing assessors maps, and so we have a little over 5,000 parcel maps available in our office. Many people now print those directly from the website. It helps expedite that process for those who use our information regularly. And the website is available. It's quite an extension, but most who use our websites know how to get directly to the county website and then to our office. This particular chart is the organizational chart. As all of our county departments have been doing, we make adjustments continually, have had staff reductions over the year in order to accommodate the economic situation we're in, as well as providing our services. This is a summary statistic of the secured roll and unsecured roll. Secured roll being land and structures, unsecured roll being anything from business assessments, boat assessments, aircraft assessment, possessory interest, etc. Again, coming to the figure of the 1.36% overall decline. The next few charts that we have available in the annual report are essentially a breakout of that number so that you can see it in the format of our cities, our incorporated areas, Redding, Shasta Lake, and the city of Anderson, as well as the unincorporated areas. So with each of those areas having the represented percentage change, city of Shasta Lake, negative 3.29, 7.27 in city of Anderson, 2.13 decline in city of Redding, and a 0.81% overall in the unincorporated areas. The next 3 pages represent, again, those same numbers broken out into the different school districts available in our county. I have statistics for Gateway, Anderson Union High School, Dunsmuir High School, Fall River Unified High School, Shasta Union High School, and Red Bluff High School available within the report. The next portion of the report covers the exemptions. There are many exemptions available to the citizens. Exemptions, there are also exclusions available in terms of what actually creates a reassessable event, etc., and exclusions from property tax assessments, period. However, the exemptions are grouped in this chart so that you can see the welfare, religious, veterans. There can be 100% disabled veterans exemption if a citizen is 100% service-related disabled. We want to do as much as possible for them, so our office handles those exemptions as well. Our total number of assessments, we don't have as many subdivisions coming in. We're not seeing as many splits and parcels for increase in assessments. That's why our overall number of assessments has been going down. And more dramatically in the last few years, we've been seeing decreases in the personal property, business assessments, etc. There just haven't been as many of those as would be typical, and hopefully will be typical again in the future as the economy does turn around. The next few charts are just kind of overviews of historical aspects. One of the things I incorporated into the chart a few years ago was the number of Prop 8 reductions, in other words, the analysis of where current market value is in relationship to the base year values of the properties. And last year, the 29,512 parcels is the number of parcels that are currently receiving a reduction in assessment. And I would like to point out that what we do is we actually do an analysis. I query the data within our files to look for those sales that have occurred going back through the January 1st of 2000, so that we can try to be proactive for the members of our community, so that we're looking for those properties that should have the reduced values applied to them. We also do, of course, receive calls from individuals, but we don't rely on that because it is my responsibility to assure that the correct valuation's on the roll, so I do that on their behalf proactively with the members of my staff. Again, more historical data to show that over the years, the total assessment roll. One of the things you can see is that if you go to the year 2006, in which we had the 14 billion, we're still our close of roll, even though we had gone up from there and then going back receiving reductions from one year to the next. It's not that we're back to 1997 types of assessed valuations. It's just that for where our bubble was, especially throughout the country, let alone our county, we had seen some inflated values that are now being adjusted to the market values. So I've put together charts so that you can see in terms of where our valuation is distributed by roll type, so that you can see the majority, 66.47%, being the improvements, land, and then personal property line items only being 28% of the assessment roll. That's pretty typical, although you have a great deal of numbers in personal property assessment, the valuations aren't the same as our secured roll. And then again, just a way to visually review the information in terms of historical data. And this data goes back to the implementation of Prop 13, being when our citizens had the protections of not seeing an increase over 2%, greater than 2% in any one given year. More pie charts to just show the distribution by area, the unincorporated areas of Shasta County being 52%, and of course, City of Reading is our next largest portion of the county in terms of incorporated areas. We also have the distribution of the assessed values, although City of Reading is smaller in terms of the area and number of assessments. They do represent just slightly over 50% of the valuation in Shasta County. The cost per assessment basis is a chart to help us maintain how we're balancing our economic budget in terms of the relationship to assessments. And the thing I'm very proud of in the relationship with the board and the staffing of the office is, yes, we've cut back staff, and yet we've also been able to maintain our assessments. I have many partners in other counties who are 18 months behind in their supplemental rolls, and we've been able to close our rolls on time with all the assessments represented in all the changes of ownership in each year being included in that, where you're not behind in our assessments. And what that does for you when you're preparing the budget for the rest of the county is it also gives you a more accurate reflection of what you're actually working with in terms of budget dollars. The performance measurement in terms of appeals would help reflect the fact of the accuracy of our assessment rolls. We like to believe that part of being proactive means that we're ahead of the game in terms of when people would be questioning their values. Many times taxpayers contact us and we encourage them to file an appeal if it's especially the timeliness of when the bills come out according to when the right to appeal closes. And if we're not able to get to them within, say, a week's time period and or prior to that final filing date, we encourage them to file. Those numbers would all be part of the 302 of our almost 100,000 filed appeals. Many of those, what we do is we continue to work with them and interact with them so that we can either explain where our values were and what went into them, and or get more information that we might not have had at the point in which we made those assessments, and we come to an agreement on those. That would be the number withdrawn by applicant would reflect both of those situations. Either now they understand what the value is, and or we've made adjustments to them, resulting in the 265 that we're able to handle. Very proud of staff for those numbers right there. I don't know if I can convey that enough. The next couple charts I actually get from the auditor's office just to give you an indication as to the effect property taxes has in the general revenue area by source. It is the single largest source of discretionary income for the county. And then the property tax distribution for each dollar, you can see that a majority of it goes to the Educational Reform Augmentation Fund, I believe is the ERAF. I don't necessarily always get those letters right. Schools, the county getting 13 cents of each dollar. As well as our role that we set here, the state does have their portion of assessments they make, and the counties do get an allocation of that. The charts are a little bit hard to see, but the states as well were affected in the decline. However, not for as long of a time period, because we're talking utilities, we're talking a large variance in terms of what they're assessing and how their assessment rolls come together. Last year, the Board of Equalization Assessments experienced an increase of 2.09%. Some brief information on the difference between state assessed and county assessed property. And now the recorder side of the office. I am an assessor and a recorder, a dual department head. And the recording of the documents is what begins the majority of the process in terms of change of ownership for our workload. And as you can see, during the peak years, which again was reflective in 2003, we had 85,000 documents being recorded, whereas last year we only had 2011. In 2011, we only had 40,000. The one thing I will point out is we are not a large shift, but we're not seeing as many, we're seeing more deeds being recorded. So with the change in the numbers, we are finally starting to recognize shifts in such a weight going to our trustees' deeds and our foreclosures. Not that there aren't still quite a significant number of them happening, but it is nice to see real sales out there too, if for nothing else than for comparable analysis. The other thing that our recorder staff does is we collect and distribute the documentary transfer tax on each of those sales, the 55 cents per 500 any transaction, and the distribution of that goes out to the 3 cities and then also within the unincorporated area. Again, more charts to get a nice visual effect of what's going on with the recorded documents and when our peaks were and where we're at now in 2011. The deeds as well, as you can see, we've got a little nudge up there. We like to take all of our positives where we can, even if it's just a tiny little adjustment in a chart. As well as the documentary transfer tax, even though our total number of documents were down, reflective in the documentary transfer tax, you can see that more dollar figures were transferring within those because we did have a very, very slight increase in documentary transfer tax collected last year. And as always, people get married and have babies and unfortunately pass, but those numbers don't tend to change much despite economic times. The last part that I put into this report a few years back was an appendix to try to help give people a brief overview of what's going on with those reductions and adjustments for current market value as opposed to factor base year values. So I have a little analysis that shows you the percent of change and the number of properties for the 29,512 reductions made and how many of those were changed by each of the percentages, 10 to 20 up to over 60%. So,
I'm going to just show you the summary view in terms of the variances, because this is an analysis. The next few pages are built into this summary view that we bring them forward. But essentially what I've done, and what I always try to point out at this point, is that what this indicates to you is if the factored base year that had been adjusted each year were enrolled instead of the market analysis valuation, this is the difference of those properties. And so the reductions, each of them broken out up here to show you the base year values, the prop rate reductions, the total reductions, and then carried forward down to the bottom so that you can see City of Reading having 36,450 assessments, had a total of 14,328 prop rate reductions created. The overall percentage on those particular assessments was a 39% reduction. The total value reduction affecting City of Reading in this example item was the $1,760,000,000 for a total at 1%, which is the statewide allocation, and then our 13% portion that comes back at a county level. And then totaling all of those together so that you can see the county's portion at 13% of the dollar had factored base year value been enrolled. And the important thing to remember is that unfortunately many of these homes that have these reductions are also the ones that change each year. I somewhat expected to see that the numbers might be shifting as some of these properties bought in 2006 sell or get foreclosed on, but we're still seeing that the total effect of the differences between base year value is increasing year to year with the increase of those reductions. As the market turns around, you're going to see some of this value come back. I would still caution that I couldn't guarantee that all of this value will come back, because each of these properties, if they sell, get a new base year valuation. So that would be my only caution in terms of those numbers. But that's my report. Do you have any questions at this moment?
Supervisor Baugh.
Thank you, Chair Modi. And Ms. Morgan, thank you so much for the report. As always, extremely well presented. You noted in Anderson more extreme changes, 7.27% on the secured roll and 10.57 on the unsecured roll. Could you add any additional insight as to why the greater change in that area?
Essentially what it boils down to is you guys had a lot of buildings going on during the peaks of the market. And last year, in terms of the sales, the comparable sales that were happening, you're still seeing homes selling for less than what their market value was previously, at a more drastic change, I guess is the way to say. When we do our prop rate analysis, what we do is we actually print out a neighborhood. So within Anderson, there's several different neighborhoods, and we look at each area specifically. And one of the, it's almost, I want to say almost like a shotgun pattern in terms of neighborhoods, because you get a lot of them that have no change from the year before. In other words, we have some neighborhoods that are stabilizing in terms of the market from last year's January 1st valuation to this year's. We still have areas that are still, the pricing is going down, and Anderson unfortunately is part of that, and or suffering more businesses. I was working my way to get it back. I passed Anderson so I could bring it up. So if you look at the land and improvements in terms of the assessed roll, what I have is last year's valuations for secured and unsecured, and you can see that the unsecured, which would be businesses, boats, possessory interest assessment, had a increase of the 10.57, but of course the numbers that's a percentage of a smaller portion of your total pie. And then what happened was you had the $38 million in value loss in the secured side of the assessment roll, the land and structure items. So overall, if you took those two together, having you have 4,631 assessments in the city of Anderson, with the overall effect of the negative 6.22. And again, what happens is, because Anderson, in terms of the pie, the portion of the pie is smaller, when you put those numbers into the county's total, your percentages are higher, but once you put the total values together, it doesn't bring down the overall percentage. That's why the overall is 1.36, even though you're still being affected by greater declines in your area. Does that make sense?
It does, and I appreciate your pointing out my error and stating 10.57 as a negative, as a positive. Thank you.
Yeah.
Supervisor Kehoe.
Ms. Morgan, thank you for your presentation this morning.
You're welcome.
This is indeed a solid piece of work, and I think we all appreciate it. If members of the public would like to, or the media would like to gain access to this report, how can they do so?
They can do so on the website. Elaine is still working on, I had the great idea, I wanted to make it, it's always been a little cumbersome putting it together in one total package so that anybody can basically download it directly to their computer and have the whole presentation at their fingertips. So as I was working on that, now Elaine has to work to pull them apart, because on my website, where the table of contents is, each line item in the table of contents, you can essentially click on and bring up that individual portion of the report, so my goal is to get them all together. So the portions are still being put together, but it's always going to be available on my website. That's the ultimate goal.
Thank you. Now, at the risk of embarrassing you and your staff, let me say this. From time to time, property owners will contact county supervisors about something about their property and their assessment. And from my experience, every time I have called your office, you've been very helpful, very receptive, and you provide really a sterling service to all of the property owners in Shasta County, and especially the Board of Supervisors. So we thank you for that.
Thank you.
Supervisor Haas.
Thank you. The Revenue Augmentation Fund that was started back with Governor Wilson, that was in the early 90s. That cost this county a lot of money, didn't it? And it continues to. So hard to balance the budget when you see all negatives across the board here. That's the sad part of this. And we all would like to think that the economy is going to get going again, but when? We keep talking about this every single year. Well, it's going to get better next year, going to get better. Well, I continue to see negatives, and it's not your fault. No, you've done a wonderful job. Wonderful job here of keeping track of all of this. It's a huge, huge undertaking. We're talking about a lot of money here, but the state pulls that money in, then they give it back to the schools, and the schools don't seem to get along as well as they used to either. So there must be some disappearing along the way there somewhere, but it's not the greatest thing when we have to deal with the state, is it?
No, it's not. And unfortunately, if these economic times weren't what they were, you wouldn't have been listening to the Williamson Act presentation a while back, which we assist in getting those numbers. There's so many parts of it outside of the report, and the funding, I would say, is the biggest thing I have to thank you guys for, because there are many assessors throughout the state who are working to get funding of the assessor's office because of how the effect is. When we have counties who are 18 months behind in supplemental rolls, it's really hard for individual counties to prepare their budgets, and you guys have recognized that. And although I've made every attempt to do my part in reducing my staff as much as possible, you also recognize the need to have us there to be able to complete this for you, so thank you.
Well, we continue to hear about the marijuana gardens out there, but where are we going to find the money to go out and control all of those? People don't understand the magnitude of this and the amount that we're losing every year and trying to keep public safety at the top. It's very, very difficult under this kind of an economy. So I would hope that in the future, if someone wants to build something in Shasta County, we'll have a positive attitude instead of a negative attitude. If they ever want to come back and try it.
No comment.
I get to say mine.
That was well said, Ms. Morgan.
Thank you.
Ms. Morgan, thank you for your presentation today. We will move on to our consent calendar. The following consent calendar items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They may be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested person may request an item be removed from the consent calendar for discussion and consideration. At this time, we have pulled off consent calendar items C2 and item C4.
Move approval on remainder of consent.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll go to item C2. This is a resolution to approve and implement electronic recording delivery system. Ms. Morgan.
Ms. Morgan, I have three specific questions.
Okay.
Question number one, what is the position of the industry relative to this staff report? Number two, what is the nature of the Attorney General oversight as it applies to Shasta County? And number three, it's kind of a follow-up of your presentation, will the $1 increase cover our operational costs? Three questions then.
Okay. And let me start with, this is kind of the beginning steps for our office to get this implemented. The electronic recording delivery system is about preparing documents and submitting them to the office electronically rather than having a courier bring them in. So there's two areas in which have been focusing on that and basically are the push for our office to go that direction. One is you can file documents between government to government recordings and or industry representatives. So as this law passed a few years back, many of the counties were able to jump right into it and begin building systems. But what happens is, and industry has been very excited about this. You look at this and you go, oh my goodness, we can file documents electronically. This is fantastic. So what happens is the AG has to get involved, and what they do, because you're essentially submitting recorded documents, they are ensuring the security of it. So whether we're accepting the documents and or the submitters are filing the documents, they go through the AG and they have to go through security protocols with the submitters and the individuals who are at the submitter's site submitting them, and then the individuals at our site receiving them have to go through background checks, etc., and you have to have secure computers, etc. So the AG is the one taking on that role of ensuring the integrity of the documents, which is very much appreciated, because I couldn't imagine just having somebody be able to take a document and scan it in and send it in. Obviously, we couldn't do that, because especially when you're, one of the biggest things you look for in recordability is original signatures. So we have to have somebody who's basically convinced the AG that they're taking responsibility for that portion of it, and parts of what the integrity of an original document is when it's submitted. So that's the AG's role. What happened is it takes a while, took quite a while to get that security system in place. In the meantime, what I didn't want to do is jump the gun in terms of trying to get onto the collection of $1 to pay for a system that was going to be years out, and our citizens in Shasta County wouldn't be able to benefit from that. We meet regularly. Our goal is quarterly, but we do make adjustments depending on what it is we have to go over, whether it's new legislations or changes in fees. With our partners in industry, we have title companies we've always met with, and we've added some of the other regular professional submitters that come into the office on a regular basis. So we've been informing them, and I would almost transition it to say they had asked us for years, are we going to go this direction? And I'm confident now that with the moving forward of it, I can focus on not just government-to-government filing, but it would be something available to all the citizens through those submitters. So yes, industry is informed. That's the AG's role. And the dollar, what happens with that dollar is it is designated in code to be used for this. So there's the ability for me to come back, the cost portion of it is part of what I'll have to come back before the board with contracts. I'll have to come back to the board, to kind of hone in on this, this program. Right now, what we're doing is we're trying to get contracted in with the AG because we think we're getting close so that we're paying our portion to the service they're providing so that we can work on the rest of the submitter allocations. But the dollar is designated for that. So we do have to track that dollar. We're very familiar with that with our modernization, our vital records, our micrographics, our Social Security redaction funds. This would be another fund that we have to use for specific items.
Good.
And it would cover those costs because I can control the cost as to the revenue.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Move approval of the staff recommendation.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Morgan.
Thank you.
The next item is item C4, which is to change the number of members of Board of Directors and appoint James Rickert to the Western Shasta Resource Conservation District Board of Directors. Mr. Cruz, are you going to speak to this item?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Modi. In the conversations that I've had with the Chief Deputy Clerk of the Board, there are a couple rather minor changes to the recommendation that I just wanted to advise the Board in connection with. There are two recommendations that are presented. The first one is that the Board approve the change to the number of members in the Western Shasta Resource Conservation District Board of Directors from 7 to 5. Under the law, the Board, the Board of Supervisors, is not required to make that approval. The law only requires that the change be made by the Board of Directors of the Resource Conservation District after publication in a newspaper, which has happened, and as such that it is now effective under the law. So that is not something that this Board needs to do at this time or at all. It's not something that is required. Of course, the Board can, but it has no legal effect one way or the other. The other item is in connection with the appointment of Mr. James Rickert, and of course I make no recommendations one way or the other from that from a legal standpoint. The only clarification is that the legislature, in its infinite wisdom, has stated that its intent that when the board makes such an appointment to a Resource Conservation District Board, it should determine that the person to be appointed has a demonstrated interest in soil and water conservation. And looking at the information that has been submitted, the board may make that determination based upon the Resource Conservation District Board's recommendation of Mr. Rickert, and from reviewing Mr. Rickert's answers to the application questionnaire he submitted, which has been provided to the board today. So based upon that information and with the concurrence of the Chief Deputy Clerk of the Board, I would recommend that the recommendation be for the board to consider, number one, determining that James Rickert has a demonstrated interest in soil and water conservation as reflected in the recommendation for his appointment by the Western Shasta Resource Conservation District Board and his answers to the application questionnaire. And number two, appointing James Rickert to the Western Shasta Resource Conservation District Board to complete an unexpired term to expire in November of 2014. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions of Mr. Cruz?
No, I'll move that, what you just stated.
Second. Been moved and seconded. Is there any comment from the public? Seeing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Move on to the rest of our regular calendar. Item R4, receive the legislative update and report from our CEO. And then receive supervisor's report, and today we'll start with Supervisor Haas.
Nothing to report today.
Supervisor Hartman. Supervisor Baugh.
Thank you, Chair Modi. I'll just mention two items today. On Saturday, there was a great event on behalf of the Northern California Veterans Museum, the Mash Bash, well-attended event, and I wanted to say that it was my pleasure to serve once again. I believe that's the sixth time we've helped at the Veterans Museum alongside Sheriff Tom Basenko, who I would note for the public record, from my perspective, is the most professional and engaged sheriff we have ever had in Shasta County. And I appreciate his attention to the community and its interests. Yesterday, I also attended on behalf of the board as my appointment to PSA 2 Area Agency on Aging, an additional meeting in Bernie, and the next meeting is scheduled for the 15th of this month. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Supervisor Sabal. Supervisor Kehoe?
Thank you, Chairman Modi. I attended the Shasta Health Assessment Redesign and Collaborative meeting along with Mr. Donnell Ewert and Ms. Marta McKenzie, and that material is upstairs and available to all of you. With my colleagues, we attended the State of the City of Reading luncheon. It was an outstanding presentation. The singing was fantastic. It was a little video show done by a young lady. It was marvelous. And then perhaps the summary of that event was a presentation or a reenactment of the first mayor of the city of Reading, C.C. Bush. And that was given by Bob Koroluk, who is a local artist of some note, an actor of some note. So it was a wonderful time, and the city should be congratulated for putting that on.
He did a fantastic job.
Yeah, he did it fantastic.
Thank you, Mr. Kehoe. And I'll also report that I, on last Wednesday, attended the Northern Sac Valley Integrated Regional Water Management Board public workshop. There were 3 of them. One was in Reading, here at the Vets Hall, one in Chico, and one in Yuba City. And the one here in Reading was well attended. So hopefully some good information got out on some of the projects that are being considered. With that, we'll move on to R5. Consider approving the Shasta County fiscal year 2012-13 Public Safety Realignment Plan. Chief Foreman.
Chairman Modi, members of the board, my name is Wes Foreman. I'm the Chief Probation Officer and the Chair of the Community Correction Partnership. If you'll give me a moment, it looks like the computer has a need to reboot. With the presentations this morning on domestic violence and the after-school program, it's nice to know that there's something else to talk about besides public safety realignment. However, today I'm here before you to talk about the Shasta County Public Safety Realignment Plan for fiscal year 2012-13. When I'm out in the community, I'm often asked, what is realignment? And my favorite response is to say that it is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to do it better. And what are we going to do better? We're going to do supervision better. We're going to do custody and custody alternatives better. We're going to do better treatment programs and services. Now, why do I think we're doing it better? The first reason is because of our principles. The first principle is to identify high-risk offenders and place them on intensive caseloads, as opposed to focusing on medium and low-risk offenders. We are assessing for and targeting criminogenic needs instead of the standard terms and conditions of probation. We are focusing on increasing accountability through intermediate sanctions, custody, and custody alternatives. We are focusing alternatives to criminal behavior, such as protective factors. And very importantly, we are focusing on measures and assessments of outcomes so that we can reduce criminal recidivism. In order to identify the high-risk offender, we use a tool that's named the STRONG. There's some information in the back of the plan under Appendix A that explains a little bit more in detail what the STRONG is, but primarily it is 2 assessments. The first assessment is a static risk assessment, which focuses primarily on the offender's prior criminal history. This information is static. Once you reach a high-risk status, you rarely can change that. And this assessment is based upon the number of offenses you've been involved in, the age at when you first committed them, the seriousness of the charges, and many other events. This principle is referred to in the literature and in evidence-based literature as the risk principle. The second assessment that this tool provides for us is an offender needs guide, which focuses on the individual's unique risks and protective factors. In the evidence-based literature, this is referred to as the needs principles. If we focus on identifying the right population, the high-risk offenders, and we focus on their criminogenic needs, which I'll refer to in just a second, then the literature says that we can make a significant difference. Criminogenic needs, what are they? They are risk factors and attributes of offenders that are directly linked to criminal behavior. Now, I have identified 8 of those, and if you take them all together, they can be referred to as the Big 8. I've separated them in this way for a very important purpose. The bottom 4 criminogenic needs are what most individuals, most counties, most agencies focus on. It is a little bit more concrete, and it is a little bit more easier to address. Employment and financial stability can be obviously seen as one of the concerns about an offender. Their family and significant relationships, in other words, their dysfunctions in their family, are contributors. Inadequate education and substance abuse. We all know these as indicators. If I go to the next slide and talk about our current profile of offenders, you'll get a little bit more example of why I've separated these 2 categories. 83% of our current population, now this study was done in April, 83% are male. That would seem obvious. 15% are homeless. We know that we have a homeless problem in Shasta County. 78% are high risk. That's not a surprise to me. 77% lack employment and financial stability. In this down economic time, that would be reasonable. 76% have substance abuse concerns. 20% need mental health referrals, and 23% need alcohol and drug referrals. Now that would be obvious. Those are rather logical. If I go back to the original slide, in the bottom 4, that's where we spend our time. And in fact, in Shasta County, we spend a lot of time finding, creating, and contracting for these types of services. What the literature will say, however, if you focus here only, you will miss some of the point. Now I'm going to go back to the profile again. And the bottom one there that's bolded is 69% of those that we assessed have antisocial behavior concerns. The top 4 criminogenic needs here will address that issue. And the literature again will say, if you don't focus on this, then it doesn't matter that you send them to substance abuse programs, that you find them employment, stable housing, manage their educational concern, unless they unless they change their thinking patterns around their offending behavior, you will not have a significant impact. Now, this year, we're focusing on 2 programs, moral recognition therapy and thinking for change. Both of these programs address the moral reasoning capacity of an offender, and they also work to change their criminal thinking behaviors. Because of that, I believe that we're making a difference. Another aspect of our program is the use of intermediate sanctions. The law allows us to use intermediate sanctions for technical violations. The reason is that this lessens the impact on the court system, and it also provides a swift and certain measure of consequences to the offender. Our current system is a little slow and sometimes disconnected. If we file a violation and place that into court, going through the court process takes some time to get through, that when we get to the end, the offender and myself sometimes have to wonder, what's the connection to the violation? By the use of intermediate sanctions, we can provide that swift and certain consequence, so there's a direct consequence to the behaviors, in particular the negative behaviors that the offender is performing. Because of that ability, we are doing it better. Recidivism is our most important measure. About 3 years ago, I was convinced in probation that the number 1 measure that probation should be looking for is how to reduce recidivism. Unfortunately, in my 33 years in probation, that recidivism was not something we talked about. When I began 33 years ago, I didn't even know about recidivism. It wasn't something we knew how to measure. It wasn't something that was easy to measure. And 3 years ago, when this became clear to me, then we set out on a campaign, we meaning probation, to define what recidivism is for the probation department. In California, we have settled on this definition: a subsequent criminal conviction while under supervision. Now, this measures our activity, probation's activity in working with offenders. It is the first time that we have had a definition, and now we're beginning to measure for that. And in my presentations on a monthly basis, I have addressed recidivism for you. Now, that doesn't mean that this is the only measure. Other measures include the number of arrests. We are now measuring that and reporting on that. Included in that is the number of technical violations, and those are all important as well. And because we're measuring that now for the first time in most of my 33 years, we are doing it better. When we first set out to create the plan last year, the 2011 plan, some of these concerns, the ones that are identified here, came to our attention. Are we going to have the capacity to supervise? Do we have enough capacity in the jail? How are we going to manage the early releases and the repeat offenders? What is arrest and bookings going to do to our impact? How do we address the rising crime and the failures to appear in court? Do we have the services? Are we going to be able to provide these local services? When we set out to create the plan, we addressed those issues. They came out in this fashion. 3 main focuses: supervision. Can we provide the supervision to keep the community safe? Custody and custody alternatives. Can we improve the jail bed space? Can we use alternative programs to enhance where we don't have enough jail space? And more importantly, we're going to assess, and then we're going to provide the programs and services that are needed. Why is this a better program? Here are a few examples. We're able now to provide smaller caseloads. Our caseloads are 1 to 50 for the realignment population versus a 1 to 75 for the high intense caseloads. We were able to increase jail capacity. We expanded the use of custody alternatives. We provided more officers on the street to hold offenders accountable. Very importantly, we are now able to provide services. We've never had money for adult supervision to provide services, more specifically in Shasta County, but by and large throughout the state of California. With this realignment program, we do now have identified resources for services. We also have the opportunity to put a one-stop service center for the most high-risk and high-need individuals. We are working towards supportive housing to address some of the homeless population concerns, and we will address education, employment, and training with a similar comprehensive program. This is our budget. The underlying number is the budget for this year. To get to that number, we had to add together what we expect to be receiving from the state this year. That's the $6.2 million with some unspent allocated funds to get to this figure. Now, we're not going to be able to sustain this figure forever, but it was very necessary in the beginning years that we focus on bringing these programs together, and it was important that we fund them appropriately. In our current plan that we provided to you, we have actually added, at your request, some more details. We have 3 pages of budget detail that will give backups to all of these numbers. In addition, in your request, we added performance measures. Now, we refer to them as targets and timelines. They are the same thing. And here I've identified a few of them, just summarized a few of them. I will not go through them all, but in Appendix B, there is a list of all of our targets and timelines. We also added some data collection measures. Again, I've highlighted a few of them in the basic areas of the plan. It is important that with our performance measures and our collecting of data, this will make sure that we continue to focus on what is needed. We address the issues, the needs of the offenders and the community, and that we have targets so that we can continually press ourselves to move forward to make sure that we have a better plan. Now, if you're not convinced yet that we're doing it better, I have a few examples, okay? Only 53 so far, or 17% of the 311 individuals that we're currently supervising have been booked into the jail for a new law violation. That's 17%, if you use it as a recidivism score, and it's not necessarily apples to apples, but I have presented to you before that our current felony supervision population recidivates at a 24% rate. So we are under that. This 17% compares with the state of California. The average in the state of California for that same population is 17%. So we have met it. Only 15 or 5% of the 311 supervised have been convicted of new crimes. Now again, it's not apples to apples, but I see that as a very positive, significant number. All offenders, and I'll say it again, all offenders are monitored according to our risk score. All high-risk offenders are on 1 to 50 intensive caseloads. All high-risk offenders receive a needs assessment and are referred immediately for services. And we have located, we are creating, and we're contracting for local services. In so many ways, we are doing better. Now, if you're still not convinced that we're doing it better, I have some examples for you of real-life cases. Story number 1. Tiffany was released from prison on 3/16/2012. This was her first prison term. She met with our mental health clinician and was immediately referred to 90 days of inpatient treatment. While there, she completed Triple P, which is a parenting program, anger management, and her residential drug and alcohol treatment program. She then moved back with the baby's father and completed a recovery outpatient program. She now has a job as a hotel maid, and after working closely with Child and Family Services, she is getting her kids back. Story number 2. Upon reporting to probation, Kathy tested dirty. She was immediately referred to a substance abuse program and to the Women's Wellness and Empowerment Group. However, she continued to use. She was then referred to an inpatient treatment program. She has almost completed that program, and she has been clean for nearly 2 months. She has gotten rid of her horrible boyfriend and reconnected with all of her kids. She is graduating from a treatment program on October 11th, and because she's doing so well, she's being referred to a program to help her get a job, which she will start when she completes the program. She is back to a sober living environment, living with her mom. Story number 3, Jessica, who is now a manager at Jack in the Box, was terminated early from community supervision. She is a graduate of the Women's Wellness and Empowerment Support Program. She called her probation officer the other day, all happy because she just bought her first new car. She has reunited with her kids after working with Child and Family Services and is doing extremely well. And lastly, number 4, Rachel completed 3 months in an inpatient treatment program. She did excellent and transitioned quickly to sober living. She is now working part-time and going to school at Shasta College. She has reunited with her kids and is working on mending fences with her mom. She is saving money to get her own place and is looking to get a second job. She was considered a model patient, has a sponsor, and is doing awesome. For one, before I go to this slide, for one, I'm convinced that we're doing a better job. Sometimes I feel like I'm standing up here by myself, the only one saying that, but I do know that there are several others in this community that are very committed and very dedicated to doing a better job. And here's a list of them. This is a list of the individuals that are on the Community Correction Partnership Executive Committee. Now, these group of individuals are extremely passionate, extremely dedicated, but I can guarantee you that they are here to do what's best for the county and to make sure that we do a better job. So with that, I want to thank you for this opportunity to present to you. We appreciate your support, and we ask for your approval of this plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Foreman. Supervisor Haas.
Well, I heard 4 examples of females. How about the mail-in? They're the highest percentage. Do we have some good stories about some of them too?
Well, next time I will plan, and I will specifically ask for males. When I ask for some examples of how we are successful, these 4 stories came forward.
Supervisor Baugh.
Thank you, Chair Modi, and thank you, Supervisor Haas. I was noticing the same thing. I think you mentioned 73% of the population were males, and or some such high figure, so I would love to hear some accounts of those. But I will say this. I appreciate you including the personal stories, because this document it's more than statistics, it's more than numbers on a page, it's more than a program and a plan. In the end, it is the successes of those individuals that everyone in this community is looking for, and I look forward to hearing more stories like that. I have one other question I'd like to ask at this time, and then I'll yield the floor. You mentioned that a key measure for us and for you, for the community, is that recidivism rate. And as part of that, you measured of importance, or you're in the process, you mentioned a change in criminal thinking as one of those issues. You mentioned two types of opportunities, classes or programs, whatever you want to call it. Can you expand on that a little bit more? You mentioned them in passing by name, and tell us how that works, and on the ground, how do you actually change someone's criminal behavior thinking?
Well, specifically the two programs are moral recognition therapy and thinking for change. Both of these programs have been used on the offender program with quite a bit of success. And the basic premise behind these programs is that they actually provide opportunities through an adult learning model where the offenders, the individuals, actually hear about how to answer questions, respond, make decisions about different ways to do things as opposed to the way they've done them now. The examples of criminal thinking changes would be that if you have friends coming up to you and are pressuring you to say, hey, you just accomplished something, let's go out and get drunk or whatever we're going to do, they actually work with the offenders in role play kind of situations where they actually teach them to respond to that, because that doesn't work for everybody, and obviously our offenders do not have the ability to make other kinds of decisions. They fall into those old traps. Some individuals, for example, when they're coming out of prison, that's one of the biggest successes. They've served their time in prison. They come out to us, and then all of a sudden, the buddies, the same ones that they participated with, got them in trouble before, would say, "Hey, let's go out and celebrate now. Let's have some drugs. Let's do this. Let's go out and oop it up and stuff." And so these two programs are actually designed to work with them to manage these situations in real life situations. They actually help them role play. They test them, and they work with them. They're several weeks long, and they reinforce this positive change, positive thinking, so that they can succeed when these kinds of situations arise.
Are they ongoing if needed? You mentioned several weeks long.
Well, initially we make the referral. The programs can last for several weeks. The programs move through their advancements. In other words, they don't just come in and have a set number of weeks. Once they make progress, they move to the next phase, move to the next phase, move to the next phase, and several people can enter the program at different times. So those that are advancing really well can actually provide help and role model for those that are just entering the program. So it is an ongoing thing, and yes, anytime we want to reassess an individual that is slipping, then we can re-refer them into these programs.
And there are many options locally. Are those the only two that are made available, or are other local options for counseling and mentoring made available?
Well, we are using several local facilities for our programs, our standard programs, such as substance abuse, mental health counseling, anger management. There are two programs currently that are working with these two programs. Empire Living, I don't know the full name, sorry, Empire program. They have added moral recognition therapy to their list of services, and Right Education has added moral recognition and thinking for change to their list of services as well.
Very good. Thank you, Chief. Supervisor Kehoe.
Thank you, Chairman Modi. Chief, thank you for the presentation this morning. I have a long list of questions and concerns, but let me summarize it by coming back to a statement that you made earlier. And I make the assumption that the statement is reflective of the thinking of the Executive Committee. And the statement was quite simply this, that we are doing a better job. Now, it seems to me, without the establishment of observable hard targets relative to what we're doing in the program, that statement is just based on an intuitive assumption that we're doing a better job, and we may be, but I'm interested in a higher level of specificity and accountability relative to our activities. You've done a nice job in identifying the top 4 and the big 8. But let me ask this question of you. The people that are in state prison now were previously residents of Shasta County. Can we assume that they possessed these negative qualities in their life before they went to state prison?
The quick answer would be yes. The assumption is that those that are committing crimes have this negative way of thinking about making their decisions, and therefore the criminogenic needs that are identified are addressing that population that has succumbed to those concerns and ended up in prison.
Well, then, if that is correct, then as a community, isn't there a wider shared responsibility? I mean, why does everything fall on probation in correcting these type of antisocial and criminal activities? If they possessed them before they ever got to state prison, then maybe we ought to be looking at employment, education, and other things.
Well, first of all, I would say that probation department is not the only agency that is trying to manage this population. The entire community is trying to manage this population. Relatively speaking, when we're talking about evidence-based practices, proven effective practices, it's a relatively new term. Now, I don't say that's 1 or 2 years. I mean, we've got several years going on, and the process of how we approach this offending population is changing. We are all changing at the same time, focusing on realignment. Probation in particular in the past several years have invested in using tools to help us identify the high-risk offender and identifying the criminogenic needs. And so, relatively speaking, that's new to us. But it's old enough that some successes have already been received. And so when the state moved towards realignment, knew that probation could provide some of that expertise and services, that they included us in that solution.
Final observation, and that is recently I received a report, and I'm not going to talk too much about it because of copyright restrictions, but it seems to me in this report and this report applies to an adjacent county. There are some pretty solid things involved in here about identifying needs of the population, establishing a solid recidivism rate, and then evaluating the results. And it is my hope that the executive committee will seriously consider having an external evaluation done of our present activities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Hawes.
What is the plan for the homeless? I know that's a problem. I mean, people are living under bridges and here and there, and I don't know how they get by, but they seem to. So is there any kind of a plan in the future for a camp or something? Because they're going to be there. I mean, we know that. Other cities have dealt with it, and it's there. You know, it's something that's there, and we got to deal with it somehow.
It has become a concern of ours. I mentioned that 15%. We've measured that in a couple of ways, and the percent comes out about the same. We know it's a concern not only in the city but Shasta County. And what we're aware of is that with the resources that we received through realignment, that we were not going to be able to just provide homes rent spaces in motels and manage the population in that way. So our plan is to do a little bit more comprehensive plan. We have a current request for a proposal out right now where we've asked agencies to come in, and then number one, the key point will be to provide a case manager or a resource individual that will join our team and work with these offenders. We will evaluate their needs, and if homelessness or if they're even couch surfing and moving from home to home without their own roof to live under, perhaps even interfering with current leases of family members or their friends. We identify those, and with the help of the resource individual, then we will have this individual work with them, sit down with them and find out, what can we do to help? How can we move you from this point to a next point to enhance this? Can we provide some assistance in directing you, in pointing them into the services that are available? And we actually have found some services that are available. And so what we want to do is have that individual join our team so that they can help us make the decisions about who do we need to invest in. Sometimes it might mean that, for instance, we'll have to come up with their utility bill to get them started so that they can get gas and electric into their home. Sometimes it might mean that we have to help with the initial front end so they can get into a home for a little while. And we'll continue to evaluate that. It's not going to be just plain a gift. We want to evaluate and work with them and motivate them so that they can begin to make their own decisions and improve this.
I have just a couple of comments. One, I agree with your assessment that the behavior that these people have is before they go to prison. I think in my experience, I would say that's true. I think they're probably more enabled after they get back from prison, but I agree with you that it's more on the front end. And it's a constant battle. I know that we have a number of programs in the county and other agencies provide things. We have parenting classes. We have, through our juvenile hall program and juvenile probation program, we have stuff for kids to try to get them on a better path. Even today we saw the group that about after school programs, that there's a chance to keep kids involved in better activities versus giving them the sort of opportunity to get into trouble and then head down that path. So it's a tough battle because we don't have the right to go into people's houses and tell them how to raise their kids, and we don't have the ability to go in their houses and tell them don't do certain things in their houses or don't do drugs in their houses or don't. So it's a tough spot. But so I think you're right. I think we need to continue with the programs to try to catch them on the earlier end. In regards to recidivism, we know our current system under the state prisons doesn't work. I mean, that's our rate, about 70% for recidivism coming out of state prison. It's a failed system that's been failing for many, many years. There are other states that do a lot better than we do. And so while your current rate is 17% recidivism, I think that would be a healthy improvement over the state system. I think it's still too early to know for sure if that's what it's going to be. I mean, it's going to take a couple more years to see. So I applaud you on your efforts to continue to work towards that goal to reduce the number of people who are reoffending and the different things you've laid out to us, whether it be the instant incarceration kind of techniques or some of the other programs that are offered to people to keep them off of drugs, to keep them off of alcohol. My experience personally was that at least 65% of people who commit crimes are doing it because of drugs and alcohol problems. And that's a huge area that we need to, not just in Shasta County, but in society, need to work on to improve. I want to go back to the Community Corrections Center.
Yes.
How's our progress on that? I know you indicated you still hope to do it by January 31st, but I'm just curious where we are today.
The target date is still January 31st to be fully operational. We continue to work with the landlord to he's extremely motivated, so we're making progress in that way as well. And we're continuing to work with the contractor for the day report side of the program, and all things are moving forward, and we're still on schedule for the end of January.
Well, I would just offer up that if you find yourself not able to keep it at the timetable you're trying to do, or getting some pushback from the landowner to bring in the big gun, bring in Larry to, wherever else you need other resources to push that along. Because I think that's sort of the symbol that's out there that needs people who are kind of, you've talked about a lot of programs you have, but they're sort of heard but not seen. And I think that the Community Correction Center is sort of that physical thing that people are looking for, to see that you're actually making that the group is making that big jump. So I would urge you to continue to push hard on that and to use whatever resources you need. And sort of along with Supervisor Kehoe's comment, whether or not you do a separate evaluation, what I would urge, or perhaps you're already doing, you haven't really mentioned it to us, is that you would explore what other community correction partnerships are doing throughout the state, that are particularly ones that feel like they're doing well or have some good successes, that you're seeing if you can borrow their ideas as well and share information, so that if we can move along faster, that's certainly a benefit to all of us.
Those are all good suggestions. Thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Haas.
Well, I think we all need to realize it's a work in progress. This is a new thing, so we continue to move along with it, and if there needs to be some change, I think that, it can come back and it can be changed. Under that line, then, I'm going to move for the approval of the plan.
Second.
Okay. And Supervisor Hartman, you wanted to?
Yeah, I wanted to thank you, Mr. Foreman, for bringing more information back to us. I think you really answered a lot of our questions and concerns. And, we're moving forward, so
Thank you.
Any other comments? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion carries 4-1.
Thank you.
Item R6, County Fire. Consider approving the Shasta County Consider support for application for a SAFER grant. Chief Kyle.
Good morning. Rick Kyle, Shasta County Fire Warden, Chief of the Shasta County Fire Department. Before you is a request for your support to extend what is known as the SAFER grant. SAFER is an acronym for Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response. It is a grant that's provided by FEMA, and the current use of that grant is to fund the second full-time paid engine in Shasta County. We have one that comes out of general fund money at Palisadro, and we are starting the second year of a SAFER funded engine that's on the airport road station here in Shasta County. The request is to apply for an extension of this grant for 2 more years, which would result in the continuation of that engine's funding. A couple things about the fund and the grant that, if you don't know already, I'll bring to your attention. It funds 100% of salary and benefits for 5 personnel it takes to staff that engine 24 hours, 7 days a week. That's 1 captain, 2 fire apparatus engineers, and 2 firefighters. During the period of the grant, Shasta County Fire Department is prohibited from reducing current paid staffing levels. That would essentially terminate the grant. There is a letter before you which stipulates that you acknowledge that aspect of the grant application. The grant does not pay for CAL FIRE's administration charges for providing that staffing for that engine. It does not pay for uniform allowance costs, and it does not pay for the overtime for those behind those 5 people when they're unavailable to staff the engine due to training, vacations, or illness. If approved by the board and by FEMA, this grant would extend the staffing until June of 2015. The grant revenue for that period would be $1,131,594. Annual cost to Shasta County Fire, not covered by the grant, would be around $82,000 a year. When you look at the cost analysis, basically we're comparing $83,000 of unfunded liability against about $500,000 of staffing a year. When you're going to ask the obvious question, where's $82,000 going to come from? Shasta County Fire would absorb that through a fund balance that we have available. Operational impacts of the second full-time staffed engine in Shasta County are that since this SAFER funded engine has gone in service about a year ago, they've responded to 1,226 incidents. One of the other things that we're looking at from a senior staff and battalion chief level is perhaps the Amador funded, which is a CAL FIRE engine funded by the county for wintertime use. Currently at the airport road station, those are housed side by side, and what we're thinking is perhaps we take that wintertime funded CAL FIRE engine and we'll move it into the Bernie area and expand their emergency response capabilities. That would also provide a more stable training platform for the East County volunteer folks that rely upon those training resources. At this point, there is no obligation. I'm merely asking for your approval to apply for the grant. Any questions regarding the process? I'd be happy to answer them.
Supervisor Hawes.
Yes, thank you for doing this. This is very, very important to our fire safety, especially in the local area. And I like the idea of going to Bernie in the wintertime too. So I'm going to move approval. We've had this for a while. It's worked well, and without it, we basically have to come up with that money. That's pretty tough to do. And we've discussed that all morning about how short we are of money. So every chance we get, we need to. And what a great job you guys do of watching for these things and getting them in front of us when you have the opportunity. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
I'll second the motion.
Supervisor Kehoe.
Thank you, Chair Moody. Last paragraph on page 1 of the staff report reads as follows. The SAFER Grant Award reimburses Shasta County Fire Department for 100% of salaries and benefits exclusive of overtime for one fire captain, et cetera. So do we have a sufficient float that we can take care of those expenses pending the reimbursement of the grantor?
I believe so. The FEMA grant is fairly responsive. The turnaround is quick. The FEMA representative with whom we do business with is timelines between applying for the revenue and receiving it are very short. And certainly in these fiscal times, that is one of the things I'm keeping my eye on as well.
So in addition to the $82,619, then we'll be fronting the costs of this operation if we get the grant, in the hopes that we'll be reimbursed on a timely basis.
Not for the entire period of the grant, no. It's basically, at the most, it will be on a quarterly basis.
Quarterly basis. Okay. Thank you.
Supervisor Baugh.
Thank you, Chair Modi. I just wanted to bring out under the financing portion of the report, and I'm just going to read from it. County General Fund support to the Shasta County Fire Department has been reduced by 24.3% incrementally over the past 5 fiscal years, and yet you have been able to maintain emergency services in Shasta County while responding to the economic pressures of those last few years. I just want to publicly thank you for your efforts to be financially wise and yet provide an excellent level of service. That has been more than obvious this year as you've managed well Shasta County Fire's responsibilities along with your other hat, CAL FIRE responsibilities. I agree 100% with Supervisor Hawes. This is an excellent way for you to be able to leverage those very few dollars we have into a lot more dollars wise. I hope you're successful.
Well, thank you. I'll make a quick comment. That's a symbiotic relationship, and a lot of that credit goes to the 287 volunteers we have in Shasta County. Those folks do an amazing job for very little compensation, and they just do it to serve their community, as well as the CAL FIRE people who dedicate a large portion of their lives in these long summer months to mitigate these fires.
Thank you for recognizing those volunteers, too.
CEO Lees, is this okay with you?
Absolutely support this.
Fits within your scheme of money?
Yeah, it absolutely is. I do support it 100%. And there's actually, we're not going to talk about them because I don't believe the need is there, but there are outs if there's some crisis, unforeseen crisis, that we will be able to utilize.
Good, thank you. So. I agree with my colleagues. I think it's a little money that goes to go a long ways. I applaud you for your efforts to continue to find ways to stretch those dollars to give us the community the services that they need to protect them from the fires. And I also agree with the comments made by my colleagues about recognizing the volunteers, so thank you for doing that. There's been a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Item R7 is a scheduled hearing. Court challenge for any action taken by the Board of Supervisors on any project or decision may be limited to only those issues raised during the public hearing or in written correspondence delivered to the Board of Supervisors during or prior to the scheduled public hearing. Item R7 is a permanent road division consideration.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Al Cathy with the Public Works Department. The item before you today is the formation of a permanent road division to maintain an emergency fire escape road in the Happy Valley area. The parcel map was conditioned to have a fire escape road, and the public hearing today is to take testimony and to count the ballots on whether or not it would be voted to actually impose the assessments on the two parcels that are being created for maintenance of the road. And with that, I think we need to open the public hearing and take comments if they're here.
Any questions, Mr. Cathy? Thank you. Open the public hearing. May I wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, close the public hearing.
We do have one ballot, and I'll hand that to the clerk for her to tally.
Thank you.
There's one ballot submitted, and the request is yes to approve.
Thank you.
So with that, you have the attached resolutions that would form the PRD and impose the parcel charges on the parcels for next year's taxes.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adopt the resolution as well as confirming the annual parcel charge and receiving annual parcel charge report. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Oh,
Aye.
excuse me.
No, that's for after this.
All in say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Supervisor Haas?
Yes, I just wanted to thank Public Works also for the fine work on Deschutes Road. We got some overlay done on the upper end and some dig outs done down there in some of the real rough spots. So you guys are watching it and taking care of it, and that's what we like here in Shasta County. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For all of your dedication.
Thank you, Mr. Cathy. That concludes our regular business. The Board of Supervisors will recess to a closed session to discuss a public employee appointment involving the Health and Human Services Agency Director and also a conference with our labor negotiator. Estimated time at this point is an hour and a half, although I think that will be, we're going to be less, 45 minutes. And also I want to report on the calendar for board meetings in the future. We're going to be canceling our October 16th board meeting because we're going to be spending several days the week before on auditor controller interviews. With that, we are recessed.